Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and welcome to my astrology channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking to Cancer on the month ahead, and the month being November 2020. Now, I tend to be a very in-depth kind of astrologer, and I also like to really take a look at what's going on so that we can actually see there's something to look at. It's not just a bunch of cosmic hoo-ha. We're actually looking at things that mean something. And because of that, I'm going to be looking at a chart while I talk to you. And that actually serves two very important purposes. On the one hand, it allows me to show you what's going on, but also what it does is remind me where things are and what I should be talking about. So I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to start here because that's a sign of Cancer. It begins the horoscope circle, and this is your first house. And when we look at sun sign astrology and what's going on in the cosmos during any given time period, we take it from your perspective. It's like you were in the center looking up at all these planets moving around you. And they form different sectors of the horoscope, which is why we get different meanings to things. And of course, because the sun is the center of the solar system, it's also the most important thing we look at during a week or a month or a year, whatever it may be, because it's illuminating a particular area of your horoscope. So on this occasion, the sun in Scorpio here is illuminating the fifth house of creativity and self-expression. And right the way through November, you have an opportunity really to connect with your true self. And it may also be you have an opportunity to stand in the spotlight. Maybe it's only for 10 minutes, or maybe it's a bit longer than that. But it is important that you get out there and sort of connect to people and also show people who you truly are. It's also a very creative area. So you may find that during the course of November, you're very caught up with things to do with babies and children. Maybe you are expecting a baby yourself, or maybe there's one coming into the family, or maybe you've got children of any age, and suddenly their lives and what's happening to them are really very important during the month of November. Now, another important thing about having the sun in this area of the horoscope is that when I think about this year of coronavirus, which has made so many changes for all of us, and we might not have a job anymore, we might not be in the home that we used to have or be sharing it with the people we used to share it with, so life is a little topsy-turvy. And it's stressful, there's no question about it. Every single person on this planet has experienced a lot of stress and anxiety to some degree because of the coronavirus. And one of the antidotes to that is creativity. If you can get your whole self involved in doing something that sort of is in the creative act, then it not only fills you with joy and a sense of satisfaction, but you'll find you've moved forward in terms of those things that you're very anxious about. So the idea of getting into your creative spirit is the main theme for November, and you can do that any which way. You can get into the kitchen and be creative. You can get out a pot of paint and be creative. You be creative in the garden. I mean, there's so many ways. You don't necessarily have to paint pictures or be a composer or all those other things. There's so many ways. Putting your personal, individual stamp on things and getting into the creative act is where things go well. And you may find that things related to all those things that I just mentioned turn out to be very important during the month. Now, if you look from this point here, where the sun is, you see this opposite point here, you obviously see the moon, but also Uranus. This is the planet Uranus here. So during this month, the sun and the moon periodically make a connection with this particular planet Uranus. So in many ways, Uranus is almost a signature on the month of November. And Uranus is all about change, the unexpected. It's about epiphanies. It's about awakenings, which I absolutely love. And it's about change. And I think one of the things that's been so hard for you during the course of 2020 is the fact that goalposts are constantly being moved. Every time you think, oh, I'll get my head around this now and that's it. Suddenly it's all gone pear-shaped again, or something else has happened. And constantly having to readjust is a real source of anxiety and frustration, and it's not been a great deal of fun. Now, the important thing about a heads up, remember, I'm giving you the shape of things to come so that you can adapt to that shape accordingly. If we already know that this is going to be another month when things will happen suddenly, unexpectedly, and we'll need to get our heads around it quite quickly, and we'll need to move those goalposts a little bit, it means that we're prepared for that. And that means everything is easier. The interesting thing here is we look at where Uranus is. It's in the area of enterprise. It's in the area of teamwork and friendship. So it may be that a lot of the things that are happening during the course of this month are revolving around those things too. So maybe you've got a business that you're trying to start, or maybe you've had a business for ages. There could be some changes in how that is structured and what happens to it. On the other hand, you may nothing to do with enterprise or business, but you certainly have friends and things that you plan to do together. So there are group events and things that involve more than one person. So it's here that Uranus gets into the mix and says, this has got to change. This has got to be done differently. But at the same time, this is allowing you to see that things don't have to be done the way they're always done. Just because you made a set of rules or a set of parameters, it doesn't matter if they get changed, because that change may be better. So I'm going to give you these dates, which are important. We're looking at the 7th of the month, when the moon will be in between these 2 points, squaring Uranus. We're going to be looking at the 14th of the month, when the moon will be conjunct Uranus here. And we're going to be looking a little bit later on, we're going to be looking at the 20th of the month, and then eventually around here, we're looking at the 17th, the 20th, and the 27th. And these are all periods when Uranus is extremely active. If we go back to the very beginning of the month and we think, well, how are we embarking into the month of November? We find Mercury here, the principle of communication. So communications are all important as we start the month. Mercury is hooked up to Saturn in the area of relationships. It is very possible that at the end of October, the last couple of days of October, something happened and suddenly everything changed. I've talked about that a lot in this November forecast. But it happened suddenly, and you suddenly got to really get around rearranging things. So it may mean that the start of the month is all about trying to sort something out that happened at the end of October. Now, the important thing about Saturn is to not be emotional about it. You have to cut emotions out of the equation, because what Saturn always requires is practical steps. It has a lot to do with being realistic, reality checks, and being expedient. So there isn't time to emote about things. It is time to be practical. On the 3rd, Mercury turns direct. And by the 6th, which is the Friday, it hooks up again to Saturn. So we've got about a week in which there might be quite a lot of toing and froing over quite a complex issue. And by the end of the first week, you should be much further ahead with that. There may even be a decision so that you know exactly where you are. There's some aura of finality about that. Now, let me come to this little group of planets here in the 7th house. They've been there all year. And it's one of the reasons that this has been a year like no other for you. I know that some Cancerians have really done well in 2020 because you've met good people and good things have come out of the situations that have happened, and you've seen your life expand, and it's been a truly good experience, even if it's set in a sea of turmoil for most other things and most other people. But they're, in the main, Cancerians, especially if you're born around the 15th of July, you've really had a lot of things to deal with that haven't been that easy. You've seen people come and go. You've seen situations come and go. And this whole idea of having to, reinvent your life hasn't been an easy process. Why I'm talking about this now is that Jupiter and Pluto come together for the third and final time, and they do that on the 12th of November. They did it the first time on the 5th of April, the second at the 30th of June, and now on the 12th of November. And because Jupiter is the principle of expansion, on the one hand, we have the prospect of an experience that really adds to the happiness and the success and the quality of our life. And we see it immediately. We see things as having come through in a sort of breakthrough way. But Jupiter and Pluto together are a bit of a boom bust couple. So as much as they can enable things to boom and to grow, they can also run out of energy. It's like bust, that's it. But even if that is a scenario and something happens at that time, you have a bust up with a friend or a bust up with some other relationship, or there's something else that goes belly up at that time, that creates an opportunity. It creates a vacancy. And what Pluto does is to eliminate, but in order, that vacuum needs to be filled. And even though you may not fill it right away, it may not happen right away, actually in the coming months and years, you will see why that had to happen and how much you have benefited from these very difficult events. I'm going to add a little bit of a layer to that, and that's because of this planet here, Mars. On the 14th of the month, Mars will turn direct. It's been retrograde for a few weeks, and it's been angling these planets here, which is why it's been a very stressful period for the world, and certain parts of the world in particular, why there's been a lot of upset and aggravation and volatility and violence and all those things. And you may have found in your own life, it has been very, very difficult. Your energies have been frustrated, and a lot of things have not been very pleasant to experience. Mars will, at some point, when it's headed out of Aries, which it will do later on, well, just as it comes into January, really, you will start to feel that that level of frustration is dissipating. As I said, it might not happen on the day, on the 14th of November, but it's around that time, it starts to move from that point. There is also, I think, quite an interesting interplay here with the idea of, the retrograde periods of planets. And for months and months and months, since the end of June, Neptune has also been retrograde. That's also going to turn direct at the end of the month. And so there are a lot of things coming to pass now that mean all this fog, all this uncertainty, a certain pattern of life really starts to come to the end as we get through November. Now, I want to come last of all to the eclipse, because you are a sign, you are ruled by the moon. So the phases of the moon tend to have much more of an effect on you. Full moons, new moons, you're much more responsive to them. And when they're eclipsed, my goodness, that's huge. So the eclipse occurs on the 30th of November, and it takes us back to the end of May when there was a new moon here. These two areas of life are connected. So it may be that you made a decision at the end of May, and you're going to get to see how that decision panned out as we reach the end of November. It may also be that you began something. Maybe it was a love affair. Maybe it was some kind of project, even a job. So we come to the end of November and we see how that's going. Now, in some cases, it's a case of a closure and completion in a way that we've completed a 6-month phase. So now we're on to a new one. So it continues, but in a slightly different form. But for others, this is the stopping point. This full moon, this eclipsed full moon says that's it. This is the end, and it's an appropriate ending from which you must move on. And there's no reason to suppose that this isn't a happy ending, so that you've been building and working towards something, and now it's done, it's over. It's sad to see it go, but it's done. I feel like that a lot about the books that I write. It's an effort writing a book. But as you come to those last few paragraphs, it's like, oh, I'm going to lose this thing that I've had in my life for so long. So although you're glad it's finished, at the same time, it's quite an emotional moment. So I want you to also think of this eclipse as actually connecting to that principle as well. So I'm going to come back to you, come back into the room again. And as I said when I began my video to you, that this is really a heads up, and it allows you to really see how to manage November in terms of when things are going to happen, and the general view of things, what the pattern of things, how things are. And I want to come back to the idea, Cancer, that you are such a sensitive soul and such a caring kind of person. And I think that's why it's been particularly hard for you to deal with some of these planetary influences that have been around this year. But you know what? A couple of them are coming to the end as we get into December. And it may be that this period of November is all about snipping loose ends, getting them all done, ticking boxes in readiness for a very new era. And I think it's a very positive thought to end on. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you on my next monthly in December, and of course on my twice monthlies every month. Bye for now.